Okay, so this happened back in the fall of 2014 when I was 16. I still think about it more often than I'd like. Not a day goes by where I don't see flashes of that night if I close my eyes for too long. It started as just another one of our weekend night adventures. My cousin Jake, our friend Lily, and I had this habit of going to creepy places after dark. You know, old buildings, shut down malls, abandoned houses, that kind of stuff. We weren't trying to summon demons or anything. We just liked the thrill of getting spooked. We all lived in a small town called Ridgeville, Missouri. A quiet place. Too quiet if you ask most kids our age. So we made our own fun, and sometimes that meant doing some pretty dumb things. That October, we decided we were finally going to check out Echo Ridge Park. Now, Echo Ridge used to be this huge amusement park back in the 80s. Everyone's parents had been there at some point. It shut down after some accident on the roller coaster. Nobody would tell us the full story, just that it was bad. Real bad. After that, the park was abandoned, and even though it sat only a few miles outside town, nobody ever talked about it. It just faded into the background. That night, we decided we were going in. Jake borrowed his older brother's truck. We packed flashlights, a couple bottles of soda, some snacks, and extra batteries. I remember Lily brought pepper spray just in case. She was the only one of us who ever thought ahead. We parked off a dirt road behind the woods that surrounded the old park. The moon was out, full and bright, and the trees cast these weird, long shadows across the ground. The wind kept making the branches creak like old bones. We joked about how the place was probably full of raccoons and mold. But I won't lie. Deep down, I was already on edge. The second we stepped through the busted gate, the temperature felt colder. Like the kind of cold that sinks into your skin. It smelled weird too, like wet rust and old popcorn. The place looked like something out of a horror movie. Rides half collapsed, game booths covered in graffiti, a Ferris wheel that stood frozen, its metal frame groaning when the wind hit it just right. We found a couple of old stuffed animals rotting in the dirt. Their eyes were gone. Lily snapped pictures with her phone. Jake wandered off to climb into one of the bumper cars. We didn't realize it at first, but the deeper we went, the quieter everything got. No crickets, no wind, no distant cars, just our footsteps and breathing. We passed a game stand with faded paintings of cartoon animals holding slingshots. One had "Help Me" scratched into its eyes. I laughed nervously and said it was probably just some edgy teenager messing around. But my voice sounded small in the silence. Eventually, we reached the old funhouse. It still had the sign above the entrance, Giggles' Maze of Mirrors. Except someone had painted over Giggles with the word Lurker in dripping red spray paint. Jake dared us to go in. Of course he did. Inside it was pitch black. Our flashlights barely cut through the darkness. The air smelled like damp wood and mildew. The floors creaked with every step. The mirrors were cracked and warped. Some reflected back weirdly, like our arms were too long or our eyes were missing. It was creepy, sure, but we figured it was just the damage and age messing with the glass. Then came the footsteps, not ours. No echoes, soft, shuffling, from deeper inside the maze. We stopped. "Hold our breath," Jake whispered. "You hear that?" We nodded. Then there was a tap. Light but sharp, like someone tapping on glass. We turned, shining our lights in every direction. Nothing, just more broken reflections. Then Lily screamed. She said she saw someone standing behind one of the mirrors. But when we rushed over, there was nothing. Just our own confused, scared faces staring back. We didn't stick around. We bailed out of the funhouse fast, laughing nervously, trying to shake it off. Jake said maybe it was a squatter or some other dumb kid trying to scare us. That's when we heard the bottle break. It came from up near the old food court, where all the restaurants used to be. We froze again. This time it wasn't just a sound. It felt deliberate, like someone wanted us to know they were there. I didn't want to go check it out, but Jake did, and Jake was already walking. Lily and I followed, mostly because we didn't want to be left alone in the dark. We moved slowly, careful. Our lights flicked around in all directions. That part of the park was worse than the rest. There were torn-up menus still nailed to some of the stands. Flies buzzed around something near a trash bin I didn't want to look too closely at. And then we saw him. In the middle of the courtyard, near what used to be a pizza stand, stood a man. He wasn't doing anything, just standing facing the wall. He was tall. Too tall. And he was wearing this old-fashioned suit, like something from a black and white movie. His hands were at his sides and his head was tilted ever so slightly to the left. Jake whispered, "Hey man, you okay?" No answer. The man didn't even flinch. Jake took a step closer, but I grabbed his arm and shook my head. Something in my gut screamed no. Then Lily stepped on a crushed can. It let out this loud, horrible crunch that echoed across the whole courtyard. The man moved, but not like a normal person. He didn't turn his body, just his head, and fast, like snapping a twig. His face was pale, like chalk, and his mouth. I was smiling, but the smile was wrong. It stretched too far. Like it hurts to hold it, we ran, didn't speak. Didn't scream, just ran. We hit the woods and didn't stop, dodging branches, tripping over roots. Jake looked back once and yelled, "He's following!" I didn't dare turn around. I didn't want to know. We made it to the truck, all panting and wide-eyed. Jake fumbled with the keys. I was practically in tears, begging him to hurry. Finally, the engine roared to life. As we pulled away, we looked back. He was standing at the edge of the trees, still smiling. Still motionless. His head was tilted even farther now, like it might fall off. We drove all the way back to town without saying a word. Later, when we looked at Lily's phone, we found something strange. A photo she didn't remember taking. It was inside the mirror maze. We were in the shot. Me, Jake, and Lily, all three of us. But there was a fourth person, behind us. Just a blurry figure in a black suit, too tall with a tilted head. We never went back to Echo Ridge and we never saw that man again. But sometimes, late at night, I still dream about mirrors and someone smiling on the other side. Let me tell you about the day I almost lost my nephew in a place that should never have been open to the public. This happened back in the fall of 2015. My name's Jake, and I have just turned 29. My sister Amanda asked if I could take her kids on a short trip for the weekend while she and her husband went to a wedding. I figured why not? I could use the break from work, and I always got along great with my niece and nephew. So I packed up the car, loaded in Jamie, he was 8, and Lily, 6, and hit the road for a weekend getaway down to Pinewood Springs. It was supposed to be a nice, quiet little mountain town with some hiking trails, a petting zoo, and an old-fashioned diner. The kind of place where nothing dramatic ever happens, or so I thought. The drive was long. We were somewhere between halfway bored and fully stir-crazy when Jamie pointed out something through the window. A big, weathered wooden sign that read, Funland Hollow, Exit 19, with a faded picture of a cartoon rabbit. Lily squealed and begged to stop, and honestly, I figured it couldn't hurt. We were already planning to check into a motel soon, so what's an hour or two at a dusty little amusement park? It wasn't listed on Google Maps. That should have been my first red flag. I took the exit and followed a cracked 2-lane road that curved through thick woods. There weren't any other cars, just silence and trees pressing in from both sides. Eventually, we reached a clearing with a gravel lot and a rusted gate. The sign above it read, Welcome to Funland Hollow, but most of the letters had peeled off or faded into nothing. Jamie and Lily leapt out of the car before I even turned off the ignition. They were thrilled. Me? Not so much. The place looked like it had been abandoned 5 years ago and then randomly reopened without fixing anything. Rides stood motionless. Paint peeled off every surface. Old snack stands were boarded up and weeds pushed through cracks in the concrete. There was a carousel, but the horses had glassy eyes and chipped faces. The music playing from the loudspeakers sounded warped and slow. like an old cassette tape melting in the sun. But the kids were smiling, and that was all that mattered to me at the time. Jamie dashed ahead, pointing at what looked like a mini Ferris wheel in the distance. But instead of heading straight for it, he suddenly turned left and vanished behind an old photo booth. I called his name, told him to wait, but he didn't answer. Lily clung to my hand, looking nervous. I told her to stay where she was, right by the popcorn stand, while I went after him. The second I turned the corner, something felt wrong. There was no one around. The park had been quiet from the start, but this was different. Still. Hollow. Like even the air wasn't moving. I started calling Jamie's name louder. Nothing. Panic started to creep in. Every parent, or in my case uncle, knows that sick, spiraling feeling in your stomach when you lose sight of a kid. Your brain immediately jumps to the worst-case scenarios. I sprinted across the cracked pavement, looking left and right, checking behind ride entrances, under benches. Then I saw him. Jamie was standing near a thick patch of hedges beside the public restroom building. He was talking to someone or something, hidden in the bushes. At first I thought maybe it was another kid or even an employee. But then I noticed the way Jamie's posture changed, stiff, uncertain, and then just like that he was yanked backward into the hedge. I froze for half a second, heart hammering, then took off running. There was no one else around, not a single soul to help. I crashed into the bushes, branches clawing at my arms, and heard Jamie's voice, muffled, scared, "Let go." "I don't want to go." I shoved through the brambles and grabbed his arm. He was being pulled by something, or someone, on the other side of the hedge wall. I couldn't see what it was. I just felt resistance, strong and sudden, like someone was on the other side trying to drag him away. Then, as quickly as it had started, the pulling stopped. The force let go. I yanked Jamie out and we tumbled onto the gravel path. I held him tight, heart still racing. He was crying but not hurt. When I asked what happened, he pointed back toward the bushes and said, "It was a man." He said his name was Mr. Silas. He said he wanted to show me something cool in the woods. I stared at the hedge. There was no path on the other side, just a mess of branches and brambles and trees so thick you couldn't see 10 feet in. I took Jamie and Lily straight to the front of the park. There was a small, crumbling booth with a bored-looking teenage girl inside. I told her everything. She barely reacted, just blinked slowly and said, "Yeah, we've had weirdos before. I'll tell my manager." That was it. I didn't wait around. We got in the car and drove straight to the motel. I locked every window and door that night. I didn't sleep. The next morning, Jamie drew a picture of Mr. Silas. I still have it. It was a man, tall and thin, with a long face and hollow eyes. His hands were too big and he had what looked like tree branches growing out of his back. Jamie said they moved like arms. The image haunted me for months, but that wasn't the end. A couple years later, in 2018, I was scrolling online and found a forum post talking about abandoned amusement parks with dark histories. One of the parks mentioned was Funland Hollow. It had apparently shut down in the early 90s after a string of strange disappearances. Mostly kids. Rumors swirled about secret tunnels, staff going missing, and one chilling report about a man in the woods they called the Hollow Host. I tried going back to find it. I drove to the same exit. But the road was gone, I'm serious. Exit 19 no longer exists. There's just a stretch of highway where it used to be. No turnoff. No signage, nothing. I even pulled over and checked satellite maps. Still nothing. It's like the place never existed. Jamie's 16 now. He doesn't remember much about that day. Just flashes and the bushes, the voice, the cold hands. Lily doesn't talk about it at all. But me, I remember everything. And sometimes when I'm walking alone through the woods near my apartment, I swear I hear carousel music in the wind. Slow, broken, and just out of reach. Let me tell you something weird that happened to me years ago. I've only talked about it once or twice, mostly because people either laugh or get that look in their eyes like they don't want to believe me, but part of them kind of does. This happened in the fall of 2003. I was 17 at the time, just learning to drive, and I had borrowed my older brother Jake's car to visit my cousin, Ellie. She lived 2 towns over and it was already getting dark by the time I left her house. My phone was dead, like completely dead, and Jake's car didn't have a charger. I figured it'd be fine. I knew the roads well enough, but about halfway through the drive I realized I needed to pee. Bad. The kind of need that just creeps up on you out of nowhere. So when I saw a little roadside sign for a rest stop just ahead, I figured, perfect timing. I pulled in without thinking twice. The rest stop was small and half hidden behind a row of leafless trees. The parking lot was cracked and uneven, and the only light was a single buzzing lamp near the bathroom building. It flickered like it couldn't decide whether to stay on or off. There was one other car parked near the far end of the lot, an old, beat-up pickup truck, but no one was in it, and the windows were fogged up from the inside. I stepped out of the car and the cold hit me right away. Not just regular cold, this had a bite to it. It was the kind of cold that made your teeth hurt. The bathroom building looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. One of the doors was hanging crooked on its hinge, and there was this weird rust-colored streak running down the concrete wall, like something had spilled and never been cleaned off. Still, nature was calling. And I wasn't about to turn back. I went inside. The second I stepped through the door, the smell hit me. Mold, old water, and something else I couldn't place. The lights inside didn't work, but I could still see a bit from the outside lamp, flickering through the small, grimy window near the ceiling. There were 2 stalls. One of them was wide open, empty. The other was closed. I stood there for a moment, suddenly unsure. Something about that second stall didn't feel right. You know how you just know when you're not alone, even if you can't see anyone? It was like that. Like I had walked into a room someone else was already in, and they were just standing still, waiting. I called out, just a quick, "Hey, anyone in here?" But my voice sounded strange, echoey, like the room swallowed it up. No answer. I waited a second, then pulled out my brother's old digital camera from my jacket pocket. I'd brought it along earlier that day to take some goofy photos with Ellie. It had a strong flash, and I figured I'd use it to light up the place just to be sure I wasn't imagining things. So I held up the camera, aimed it toward the closed stall, and took a picture, flash. For a split second, everything lit up bright white. My eyes burned from it. I blinked a few times and looked at the preview on the little screen. Nothing. Just a toilet and the stall door. I let out a breath and laughed a little, trying to shake off the nerves. I went into the open stall, did my business as fast as I could, and washed my hands at the cracked sink. The mirror above it was so dirty you couldn't really see anything clearly, just shapes and movement. That's when I heard it, a sound like metal tapping on tile. Very faint, a ting-ting-ting. I froze, hands still dripping wet. It had come from behind me. From the stalls, I turned around slowly. The closed stall door was still shut. I didn't hear anything else. I dried my hands on my jeans and took a cautious step toward the closed stall. My heart was thudding so hard it was making my vision pulse. I don't know what made me do it, but I raised the camera again, aimed it at the stall, and snapped another photo. Flash. This time I saw it, just for a moment. A tall figure hunched over slightly, as if it had been waiting or listening. I couldn't see the face clearly, but it was wrong. Long, distorted, like someone had stretched it out. I backed away fast, slammed into the sink. The camera slipped from my hands and clattered to the floor. I didn't even try to pick it up. I ran out of the bathroom, into the cold night, back to the car. I jumped in, locked the doors, and tried to catch my breath. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely put the keys in the ignition. After a minute or two, I grabbed the camera from where it had fallen between the seat and the console. The preview screen was still on. I scrolled to the last photo. The figure was there all right, standing just a few feet from the toilet. It looked human, sort of. Tall, maybe 6'3" or 4, wearing what looked like a coat or maybe something heavier. But the face? It was blurry, not because the camera moved, but like it wasn't supposed to be seen. There were no eyes, no mouth. Just smudges where a face should have been. I kept scrolling through the other pictures I had taken earlier that day with Ellie. Us making faces, pretending to fall into leaf piles, that sort of thing. But something caught my eye. In the background of one of the pictures, way off behind us, I saw what looked like a person standing in the woods. They were just barely visible, partly hidden behind a tree. I zoomed in. The figure was tall, wearing the same kind of heavy-looking coat. I checked another photo. This one was taken in front of the ice cream stand near Ellie's place. There, behind the corner of the building, barely noticeable, was that same shape. That same height, I found 2 more, one near the playground and one near the bus stop we passed walking back. In every photo, it was the same. The figure, standing still, always facing the camera like it was watching us. I felt sick. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even get out of the car for hours. I just sat there with the doors locked and the windows up, watching the tree line near my house, waiting to see if it would show up again. I never transferred those photos to my computer. The camera ended up in a box in the garage somewhere, and I haven't looked at it since. I think it's probably buried under years of junk by now. Part of me wants to find it, just to prove to myself I didn't imagine the whole thing. But a bigger part of me really doesn't want to see that picture again, because here's the thing. Every once in a while, when I'm out somewhere at a fair or walking past a store window, I catch a glimpse of something tall in the reflection, just